I'm with the Satanic Temple. I'm Lucien Greaves, the spokesperson and a co-founder of the Satanic Temple. And usually when I'm invited to speak at all, it's to secular groups or atheist groups, and that's because we've made great strides fighting for the separation of church and state. But there's inevitably always a couple of people who don't understand why somebody representing religion would be at something they feel is, by its very nature, anti-religion. So I feel that I should explain from the outset that Satanism to us is a metaphorical construct by which we contextualize our values and our goals, and our powers of critical thinking are fully intact. So I would like to start by talking about the problem of alien abduction. Little gray extraterrestrials that come and probe anuses and take people up in a spacecraft and do all manner of experiments upon them. And we know this happens because these narratives come up, usually in the course of hypnosis. And there's a certain uniformity to these narratives with people who don't communicate with each other that indicate to us that there must be something deeper going on than just people making this up. And plus, these people seem to truly believe it. At Harvard, they even did a study on people who were abducted by aliens and did psychophysiological response studies upon them. And the memories they were recalling of alien abduction seemed to react with them like a normal trauma would, as compared to war veterans or people who had provable abuse, that kind of thing. So, interested in this, I talked to some of the people who do the hypnoregressions on these people and discover these narratives. And something interesting about it is some people work with one type of abductee while others work with another. I spoke to Dolores Cannon and David Jacobs, and David Jacobs believes that the aliens are malevolent beings who are here to experiment upon us. Dolores Cannon thinks they're kindly aliens and they're here to help us. So why is it that people with these distinctly different alien encounters end up separating themselves so perfectly into these different camps of who they see for their regression? And that was the question that was posed to them when I went to a conference, and their replies are somewhat interesting.
There are a lot of people who think that this is benevolent and that these beings are kind, wonderful, and loving. They have two things in common. They've gone to a person for hypnosis who has that agenda and bestows that agenda upon their memories, or they've had no hypnosis whatsoever. And they're mistaking certain procedures for love and affection, which they don't understand.
So these are evil aliens.
I'm not going to say they're malevolent or benevolent. I'm saying that they're working for their own agenda that doesn't include us. Let's put it that way, or might include us in a peripheral way. But they're doing this. This is a program we're looking at. That is, we used to think that this was a study, that this was that they were learning about us. You know, that they were grabbing people like Barney and Betty Hill and seeing what makes them tick. The evidence, after years of laboring under this evidence, it didn't hold. We couldn't, the evidence just wasn't there.
So what are they doing with this?
This is a program, and the program, as a program, it has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it's goal-directed.
What's the goal?
In other words, they're doing this for a reason. I'll ask the questions around here. And they're doing this for a reason. And so what is the reason? Well, there's a lot of people who have posited they have a dying planet, they're looking for resources, they're blah, 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 blah. But the reasons for, the ultimate reason, and I'm skipping things, the ultimate reason, we don't really know. We don't really know the ultimate reason. My personal opinion is that it's an integration program into the society by hybrids. That could be wrong, but we don't know why. We don't know why.
Well, a lot of people think something terrible has happened to them when they've had a UFO experience. They think they've been traumatized. They think they've been hurt in some way. Well, when I found out that's not what happened at all. It can be a very gentle experience. But their conscious mind has made it into something that's fearful. That's the difference. And it's not really what happened at all.
I just want to interrupt for one question. Can you tell me about an example with a gentle experience? And just look at him.
There's so many of them. I'm just trying to think of. Well, there was one. I have to go back and figure how I preface it. But one lady, she kept saying she'd had experiences with the ETs, and that they'd taken her on board a craft, and they said they did all these terrible things to her. And one of the things they said was that they cut her breast. And I said, no, that does not happen. And all kinds of traumatic things that she remembered that they had done to her physically. But when I had the session, we found out that wasn't true at all. And they explained it. We know women are sensitive about their breasts, and they said during their examination they had to do, we accidentally brushed against her. And that was all that happened. But she interpreted that when she woke up as being hurt.
Clearly it's all laughable bullshit. But what that should show you is that they're obviously guiding the memories, the so-called memories that these people are having. The breast experience taken to David Jacobs would turn into a traumatic memory of alien abuse. With her, it's far more benign, and they're benevolent because she's locked into the idea that it just couldn't be the case that aliens would have abused her because that's not their nature. Now, what does this have to do with Satanism? Oddly, most everything you think you know about Satanism comes from evidence no better than this, and it's still used in therapeutic settings and this recovered memory tactic where people are told that they have traumas buried in their mind that are so incomprehensible to their conscious mind that it must be locked away and compartmentalized in a different part of the mind. And there was a moral panic. I'm not sure how aware you are of the term Satanic Panic. It's a terminology known to sociologists now, but it was a real witch hunt we had in the United States from the 80s to about the mid-90s. And people went to prison, people had their lives ruined on essentially claims that were supernatural in basis, or at least so implausible to be impossible. The idea that there's a satanic conspiracy so large and so ubiquitous that you can't find a police force without secret Satanists upon the force, or judges that have some secret code amongst each other and jurors. This was even brought to testimony with expert witness Randy Noblet. He testified against Fran and Dan Keller in Texas, and they spent some 20 years in prison, at least 21 years. They just got out, I don't even think a year ago now, and Noblet still teaches about ritual abuse at Alliant University in California. And many of these people who ruined lives with these lies about satanic ritual abuse, they carry on about their business and there's no repercussions at all. And I hope you begin to get some kind of understanding about how not standing up for Satanists does actually have negative ramifications. In the Satanic Panic, it's kind of ironic now that we can look back and see that the real kickoff of the Satanic Panic was instigated by a devout Catholic, and he was doing recovered memory therapy with Michelle Smith, who later became his wife. And the book was absurd in that it was actually a supernatural tale. Jesus and Satan both appear in the book, and Satan was supposed to have abused her and scarred her horrifically, and the lack of physical evidence to corroborate her story was attributed to Jesus coming down and removing her scars. And these people had interviews on Oprah and a lot of the daytime talk shows and that kind of thing. And they tried to put a secular veneer on this religious witch hunt. You would hear Geraldo talking to kids like Sean Sellers, who was this celebrated case supposedly proving the whole satanic threat. And he murdered a convenience store clerk, and then he murdered his parents. And by his own telling, his conception of Satanism had nothing to do with any organized Satanism whatsoever. It was kind of his idea of what Satanism was supposed to be based on the anti-satanic rhetoric he was hearing during the Satanic Panic. So there was kind of this feedback loop that was happening. And you kind of saw that feedback loop develop more of a culture of actual Satanism, because as heavy metal and Dungeons and Dragons came to be blamed for Satanism, people who embraced heavy metal and Dungeons and Dragons began to see nothing wrong with Satanism. Yes, sir.
All right. So this, I don't know how far off topic this, but this still has something to do with, you know, the Satanic Temple and whatnot. You were talking extensively about, you know, the Satanic Panic that happened, you know, in the mid 80s and 90s, and I'm just curious about that because, and just coming from my perspective, I grew up in the Black church, and the Black church has a new quote-unquote Satanic Panic, except it's not involving rock, you know, rock and metal and any of those subjects. Now it's involving like hip hop and rap music being satanic. And there's a huge backlash against that within like the Black community. And I'm just wondering, do you still have people like accusing you of like releasing like satanic music, like with rock, rap, hip hop? Do you still have to deal with a lot of that, and do you still actively engage those who want to slander you in the Satanic Temple and those that are quote unquote Satanists for listening to like the wrong music and whatnot? Because I feel like even now we still have to deal with the stigma of certain music being satanic, certain lyrics and bands being satanic, certain groups like you being satanic and malevolent and evil. Do you still have to deal with that, and do you still like, are you still like a watchdog group for those?
Well, that's become a bit more of a joke now, because you know they can interview certain bands and accuse them of being satanic, and they'll claim, well, they call us satanic because we are, you know. And you have death metal bands that really embrace that, and you can't say that they're not satanic. You have to redefine what the terms are. What do you mean by Satanism? Is this driving people to go out and kill, and that kind of thing? But the really scary accusations are the ones of ritual abuse, of repressed memories of sexual abuse. And you look me up online, you'll see this crap about how I defend pedophiles with my position on false memories when it comes to alien abduction. And as I said, there's this group, the International Society for the Study of Trauma and Dissociation. They're considered a professional mental health organization, and they still put forward this pseudoscience of recovered memories. And when you start questioning their narrative, and when you start pointing out, as I do, that your evidence for this is no better than those of the alien abduction crew, and it's really true. They do retrospective surveys and call it science. What they do is they get a bunch of true believers together, give them a survey, and they say, okay, it has all these common elements, and they quantify it, they give it percentages, and they call it science, and say that the phenomena is then proven. You know, it doesn't say anything about how people came up with these memories, but they claim it does. And they misappropriate data, they lie. The ISSTD has plenty of characters in there whose science is worse than questionable. And so this, I think, is how this particular conspiracist pseudoscience has survived. People don't want to be accused of being pedophiles or defending pedophiles, and that's invariably what you'll get when you get into this topic, and people will claim that for you to say that recovered memories don't have this validity, that you need corroborating evidence, that you are attacking victims of sexual abuse. And so you can go from saying, I think alien abduction is bullshit, and I think claims from the Satanic Panic are bullshit, to being accused of defending pedophilia. And that's the kind of situation I'm in now. But we have to choose our fights on who we sue for slander and who we don't. Fortunately, some of the slander, I think most of the slander, if not all, that you'll see about us online is self-evidently incredible. They always take it a step too far, and I don't worry that anybody would really believe some of the things written about me. Yes.
Maybe I'm out of the loop, but didn't Elizabeth Wall just put this memory crap to bed? Like,
a lot of people put this to bed, but the practice has never been properly shut down. The APA, American Psychiatric Association, has never truly denounced it. And if you look around any area you're in, you're going to find people who do this kind of regression. You're going to find people who look for people who work with dissociative disorders. That's essentially code word. And everywhere I've gone where dissociative identity disorder has been an issue, the most bizarre and crass conspiracy theories have been in the background. And I'm writing, I was co-authoring a piece in Vice with a friend of mine. She went to the recent ISSTD conference, and they put out all this scientific sounding literature, and then you go to the conference and they're talking about, you know, just these old 1980s type tales of satanic abuse. And as he says, it's coming back in certain areas. And as I pointed out, the Kellers, they were just released from prison. And there was a case in Missouri just years ago, look up the Moeller case, M-O-H-L-E-R. They were accused of murdering people at their family farm by a couple of their daughters who underwent therapy. I got like 5 minutes. So the sheriff's department came in, they dug up the property, they didn't find anything. There weren't corroborating injuries for what the daughters were claiming. There should have been scars. They went through medical examination. The prosecutor dropped the case, and then we came to find out later that at least one of the daughters was seeing an energy healer / pet psychic. And for this family's lives were ruined. I mean, it's funny because it's so over the top and outrageous, but people's lives are being ruined. And I started writing about this before the Satanic Temple, and people come to me still all the time having these issues where they're being accused of something based on false memories, or they lost their daughter. In another case, St. Louis, yeah, it was St. Louis, the Castlewood Eating Disorders Clinic. You can look them up, charges of satanic ritual abuse. But in this case, women who came out of the facility were suing because they recognized they were implanted with memories of satanic ritual abuse. And I was in contact with families who weren't so lucky, where the daughters left and that narrative still meant something to them, and they were still accusing their families of being involved in this kind of abuse they had. So anyways, that is all the time I have.